In a city where steel towers kissed the sky and wealth whispered behind iron gates, one mansion stood colder than the rest, not because of stone or steel, but because laughter had long since fled its halls. Inside lived a broken father and his daughter, a child whose body was still, but whose heart was screaming to move again. Then, one dusty afternoon, a barefoot boy with no name and no home slipped through the hedges, and began to dance. What he did next didn't just make a little girl laugh, it cracked open a world of silence, and changed everything. Let's begin. High atop Crestwood Hill, the Ashworth estate loomed like a forgotten dream. Its marble columns gleamed under the sun, their surfaces so polished they reflected the sky above. But despite its grandeur, the house stood as a monument to sorrow, a palace of memories frozen in time. 2 years had passed since the accident that shattered the Ashworth family forever. On a stormy night, when rain lashed against the windows and thunder echoed through the hills, tragedy struck. A car skidded off the road, sending 8-year-old Lila Ashworth flying from the back seat. She survived, but her legs didn't. Now, confined to a titanium-reinforced wheelchair, Lila was no longer the whirlwind of energy she once was. Gone were the days of pirouettes across the living room floor or paint-splattered afternoons creating masterpieces on canvas. Her laughter, once as bright as sunlight streaming through stained glass, had dimmed into silence. She rarely spoke now, her voice soft and distant, like whispers carried away by the wind. Her father, Damien Ashworth, watched helplessly as his daughter slipped further into herself. Once a man who commanded boardrooms with ease, he felt powerless in the face of this new reality. As a tech tycoon whose empire spanned continents, he had always believed money could solve anything. He poured millions into treatments, robotic exoskeletons designed to mimic natural movement, cutting-edge neural stimulation trials in Switzerland, even hiring a private neurologist who promised breakthroughs. Yet none of it brought back what truly mattered, Lila's spark. Every afternoon, Lila would will herself to the sunroom, where golden light spilled across the floor in long, honeyed streaks. It was her favorite spot, though she never said why. From there, she could watch the sparrows darting through the overgrown garden, their wings slicing through the air with effortless grace. They seemed so free, so unburdened by the weight of the world. Sometimes, she'd reach out toward them, her fingers curling slightly as if trying to catch something intangible, a memory, perhaps, or a feeling she couldn't quite name. She never cried anymore. Not since those first few months after the accident, when tears had flowed like rivers but brought no relief. Now, she simply waited. For what? No one knew, not even her. Maybe for the pain to fade, for her body to remember how to move again, or maybe just for some small piece of joy to find its way back to her. Until the day he appeared. It happened on an ordinary afternoon, with nothing extraordinary about it, at least at first. Damien was walking down the hallway, coffee cup in hand, when he noticed a flicker of movement near the ivy-covered east wall. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light, a shadow cast by the shifting clouds overhead. But then he saw him, a boy, no older than 10, barefoot and wild-haired, spinning in clumsy yet joyful circles. His skin glowed warm like cinnamon, and his black curls bounced with every step. The boy wasn't looking at the mansion, he was dancing, for someone inside it. Damien followed his gaze and realized with a start that the boy was performing for Lila. She sat motionless in her chair, her expression unreadably still. Then, something incredible happened. Her lips twitched upward ever so slightly. And then, impossibly, she smiled. A real, bubbling laugh escaped her lips, breathless and pure, like the sound of wind. Chimes catching the breeze. Damien froze, his coffee cup slipping from his grasp. It shattered on the floor, shards scattering like broken promises. But he barely noticed. All he could think was, who is this boy? And how is he doing what all my money couldn't? The next day, Damien waited. He lingered by the window of his study, pretending to review documents on his tablet but unable to focus. His mind kept replaying the image of Lila laughing, really laughing, for the first time in 2 years. That boy, whoever he was, had done what months of therapy and millions of dollars couldn't. And Damien needed answers. Just past 3 o'clock, as if summoned by some unspoken agreement, the boy reappeared. He slipped through a gap in the hedge near the old rose garden, his bare feet leaving faint prints in the damp soil. This time, Damien didn't hesitate. He stepped outside, closing the heavy oak door behind him with a soft click. The boy froze, eyes wide like a startled deer caught in headlights. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Damien spoke, his voice low but not unkind. "Who are you?" The boy swallowed hard, his fingers nervously twisting the hem of his threadbare shirt. "They call me Rio," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "Rio? Is that your name or a place?" "A little of both," the boy admitted with a shrug. "I was left at the Rio bus depot when I was 3. No one came back for me. So I just stayed with the name." Damien's chest tightened at the words. He'd heard stories like this before, children abandoned, forgotten, left to fend for themselves in a world too harsh for innocence. But hearing it now, standing face to face with this wiry, dirt-smudged boy, made it all feel painfully real. "And where do you stay now?" Damien asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to hear the answer. "Under the bridge by the river when it's dry. Sometimes in the back room of Mama Rosa's laundromat. She leaves the heater on at night." Before Damien could respond, another voice joined the conversation. "Daddy, please, don't send him away." Lila rolled herself onto the patio, her hands gripping the wheels of her chair tightly. Her knuckles were white, but her expression was firm. "He told me a story yesterday about a dancing bear in Mexico," she continued, her voice carrying an urgency Damien hadn't heard in years. "It made me forget my legs for a minute." Damien turned to look at her. Really look. Her posture was straighter than usual, her shoulders squared. Her fingers tapped lightly against the armrests, keeping rhythm with an invisible beat. Something inside him shifted. "Rio," Damien said slowly, turning back to the boy, "why do you dance?" Rio grinned then, sudden and radiant, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. "Because when I move, the world stops hurting. Even if just for a song." That afternoon, Rio danced again, this time with a worn harmonica he pulled from his pocket. He played a jazzy tune, stomping and spinning with reckless abandon. At one point, he attempted a handstand, only to tumble into the grass with a laugh. Lila shrieked with delight, her laughter ringing out like bells. And then, something extraordinary happened. Lila reached forward, gripping the wheels of her chair, and pushed. Just once. Just enough to roll 2 feet closer to him. Rio stopped mid-spin, his eyes widening in disbelief. Damien held his breath, afraid to hope. "You did it!" Rio yelled, scrambling to her side. "You moved." Tears shimmered in Lila's eyes as she looked up at him. "I felt my arms, like they remembered." Over the next 2 weeks, Rio became a fixture at the Ashworth estate. Every afternoon. Like clockwork, he would appear near the rose garden, his harmonica tucked into his pocket and a mischievous glint in his eye. And every afternoon, Lila would wait for him. Her anticipation growing with each passing day. But Damien wasn't just watching, he was studying. As a man who had built his empire on innovation and precision, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to Rio's dancing than met the eye. It wasn't random or chaotic, it was deliberate. Almost calculated. So, Damien hired a neurologist to observe from a distance, recording the sessions discreetly with hidden cameras. What they discovered stunned them all. Rio's movements weren't haphazard, they were rhythmic patterns, carefully choreographed sequences that mirrored physical therapy exercises. He used exaggerated motions, call-and-response gestures, and even mimed actions like flying or swimming, which seemed to trigger muscle memory in Lila. When she watched him dance, her brain lit up as though her own body were moving alongside his. One evening, after another session filled with laughter and tentative progress, Damien found Rio sitting on the back steps of the mansion, eating a warm bowl of stew prepared by the housekeeper. The boy's feet were still bare, but they were cleaner now. No longer caked with dirt. Rio, Damien began, settling beside him, how do you know these moves? These dances? Rio shrugged, his spoon pausing midair. My mom, before she left, she was a dancer. At a club downtown. She used to teach me routines. Said dancing was the only thing that could heal a broken heart. Or a broken body. Damien felt a pang of sorrow for the boy. Abandoned at such a young age, yet carrying fragments of love and wisdom from a mother he barely remembered. You're not just making my daughter happy, Rio, Damien said gently. You're activating her nervous system. Doctors call it mirror neuron stimulation. When she watches you move with joy, her brain responds as if it's moving itself. You're helping her reconnect with her body. Rio looked up, confusion flickering across his face. So, I'm helping her brain. You might be the best therapist she's ever had, Damien replied, his voice thick with emotion. That night, Damien sat alone in his study, staring out at the moonlit garden where Rio and Lila had danced earlier. His mind raced with possibilities. For years, he'd thrown money at the problem, believing science and technology held all the answers. But now, he realized healing came from connection, from courage and kindness and the simple act of sharing joy. He made a decision. The next morning, Rio found a key taped to the garden bench. Alongside it lay a neatly folded note written in elegant handwriting. Asterisk, your room is ready. Second floor, blue door. Clothes, school uniform, and breakfast at 7 a.m. Welcome home. D. Asterisk. Rio stood there, the key clutched tightly in his fist, tears rolling down his dusty cheeks. For a moment, he didn't move, as if afraid that stepping forward might shatter the fragile dream before him. But then, slowly, he reached out and touched the cool metal of the key. It felt solid, real, like a promise kept. Weeks passed, and Rio settled into life at the Ashworth estate. He started school, wearing a crisp new uniform that smelled faintly of laundry detergent and hope. The other kids teased him at first, calling him the rich kid who wasn't, but Rio didn't mind. He knew who he was now, a boy with a family, a purpose, and a sister who believed in him more than anyone ever had. Every afternoon, without fail, Rio returned to the garden. Sometimes he danced alone, spinning beneath the sprawling oak tree until the world blurred around him. Other times, Lila joined him, her movements tentative but determined. She began lifting her arms during his routines, mimicking his gestures like a shadow learning to step into the light. Her progress was slow, almost imperceptible, but it was there, a flicker of life returning to her body. Then came one rainy Thursday, when everything changed. The sky was heavy with clouds, and droplets pattered against the glass windows of the mansion. Inside, the air was warm and cozy, but Rio insisted they go outside anyway. Rain makes the ground softer, he told Lila with a grin. Easier to fall. They wheeled themselves into the garden, where the grass glistened under a thin layer of water. Rio pulled out his harmonica and began playing a slow blues tune, its mournful notes mingling with the sound of raindrops. As he spun in lazy circles, Lila watched him intently, her fingers gripping the armrests of her chair. And then, something extraordinary happened. Lila placed her hands firmly on the armrests, gritted her teeth, and pushed herself upward. Her legs trembled beneath her, unsteady and weak, but she stood, wobbling, shaking, yet upright, for 8 whole seconds. Damien rushed outside, his heart pounding. "Lila," he cried, tears streaming down his face. "You're standing." She smiled, breathless and radiant. Rio says, joy is stronger than pain. That evening, Damien gathered them in the grand living room. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting a golden glow over the space. Soft music played in the background, filling the silence between words. "I used to think healing came from labs and money," Damien said, his voice thick with emotion. "But you two taught me it comes from connection. From courage. From a boy who danced through life with nothing, and gave everything." He paused, kneeling beside Rio. His eyes met the. Rio looked at Lila, who grinned and nodded enthusiastically. Then he turned back to Damien, and for the first time in his life, he didn't just see a wealthy man. He saw a father. "I'd like that," Rio whispered. "But only if Lila's my sister." Lila threw her arms around him, holding him tightly. "Always," she said. Outside, the wind carried their laughter through the trees, weaving it into the fabric of the night. The mansion, once silent and somber, now hummed with life. In the garden, where a barefoot boy once danced for a girl in a wheelchair, 2 children now spun together, slowly, shakily, but free. And high atop Crestwood Hill, the Ashworth estate finally remembered how to laugh again. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to reflect on the power of connection and kindness in our lives. Miracles often come in unexpected forms, a smile, a dance, or an act of courage that reminds us we're never truly alone. What made you believe in miracles today? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's create a space where stories of hope and resilience inspire others to keep moving forward, no matter how dark the night may seem. If you enjoyed this tale, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need a reminder that joy can bloom even in the most unlikely places. Together, let's spread light, one story at a time. From all of us here, thank you for reading. Stay kind. Stay brave. And never underestimate the power of a single dance.